Welcome to NZ Money Karma, where I'm finding freedom from the daily grind through budgeting, simple living, and adventure. Wow, 2025. I hear everywhere cost of existence crisis. Go to the supermarket, sometimes you feel like you want to cry because it's just so blimmin' hard. And it can feel for everyday families like us. I'm a mum to two teenage kids. I've got a husband. We live in Otautahi, Christchurch, New Zealand. It can sometimes feel, to kind of the average family, like all the cards are stacked against us. I'm not going to go into the whole why billionaires want to keep us poor. I'm just going to look at expenses and just have a bit more of a chit chat around the cost of living at the moment. It's not the first time we have experienced high costs of living in my lifetime. So, in my lifetime, when I was a wee baby, my parents' mortgage rate was around 20%. We were rationed for food. Sometimes you were only allowed to buy milk at particular times. Fuel was rationed, so you're only allowed to drive on certain days, use your car. So we've had restrictions placed on our resources before in my lifetime. When I got a mortgage for the very first time, my interest rate was 13%. I remember when it went down to 8 and we thought, wow, that's so cheap. Now people would be horrified at that. So it's not at all new. Living has traditionally been really expensive, and that's why we've all gone to work so that we can pay to live, right? That being said, there are some things that make it particularly difficult at the moment. So, the average income in New Zealand is $31.61 per hour. That's just under $66,000 a year. We have a crazy tax system that says if you earn $53,501, you should get taxed at 30%. Whereas if you earn $180,000, you're only getting taxed at 33%. So they're kind of saying that earning 53,000 and earning up to 180,000 are basically the same. Now that's insane. 30 years ago, yes, I can remember my husband saying, I just want to earn $1,000 a week and then I'd be happy. $1,000 a week now does not get you very far in New Zealand. And I do think that tax system needs to be updated. But that aside, we have a high cost of living country. Apparently, it's around, as a minimum, $6,372 to exist per month in New Zealand. So I thought, let's go through some of the kind of prices that people have to pay to live. If that's what the average family of four needs to spend per month, let's go through food, housing, and transport and see what that actually costs. Not just for me, but for the average family. What does it actually cost, you might be wondering, on a monthly basis, weekly basis to live in New Zealand? So let's have a look. This is what I thought would be interesting for this video. Let's jump in and have a look at what it costs in New Zealand to live here, for the three big things: housing, food, and transport. So I'm just going to jump in here and have a look in Otautahi, Christchurch, in a central-ish city suburb. It's not where I live, but I wanted just to kind of look at a comparable place to where I live. And let's just see what we can find for the money that we have. I'm kind of looking at a house that is somewhat similar in price to my own house, and just to see what we can get for that money in a different suburb. I definitely want to have, I'm just going to do like what we do here. We have 3 bedrooms, we have a bathroom, we have a backyard, and let's see what comes up. Okay, not a lot, right? That's that barn. That's a project, isn't it? These aren't really similar style houses. Oh, there's one, a character house. We live in a character home. So I guess you can see there, ranging from a kind of $1 million down to about 700. They all require work being done to them though. So let's just increase it a tiny wee bit and see if we get any more scooped up into the mix. We don't, do we? We've got basically all the same things. So this is it's not exactly like my house. It's probably a wee bit bigger because it's got an upstairs, or they've had done a loft conversion. But it's a similar kind of house, I guess. Expensive, right? That's what you get for close to $1 million here in Ototahi, Christchurch, New Zealand. And let's have a look quickly at renting, because I know lots of people say, well, you're mortgage free, and I am mortgage free, and that is, that helps us immensely. So let's just have a look and see if you weren't mortgage free and you needed to get a mortgage. So let's just jump on and have a look at a mortgage calculator. These are pretty standard interest rates. I think they're actually quite good at the moment. Historically, the average is 8%, so I would always recommend if someone's looking for a mortgage that they work their repayments out at 8%. So let's jump in here. We've got a loan calculator and find out what we would be paying in a mortgage. So let's just say we're going to have I'm having trouble here getting it in, aren't I? So let's just say the cost of the house is $950,000, but we've got a decent deposit, $500,000. So this wouldn't be your first home. This might be your second home after you've built up a bit of equity. This is the mortgage rate I would pick if that's what I was doing. And let's lock in some years. That seems pretty reasonable, 20 years. Okay, so that's what we're paying, $668 per week. And then I'll just decrease that length of time to 15 years as per Dave Ramsey, and then you're looking at $800 a week. So again, not so bad if you've got more than one earner in your household. However, if you have only one earner, that's a huge chunk of change. Now I'm just going to have a very quick look here at a lower price house. So this is something, if my kids were looking for their first home, they'd be looking around the $450,000 mark. They'd have a 20% deposit, which is $90,000, and paying that off over 15 years, they would have $643 per week would be the payment. So pretty expensive if you're a singleton. If you are working together with somebody, much more affordable. For my kids, I will be recommending that they buy their first houses together really early. As soon as they can get in the market, I would want to be helping them get in the market, and I'd like them to do that together. But many people in New Zealand now can't buy their own home for a variety of different reasons. So let's have a look in Ototahi, Christchurch, and just see what it costs to rent. So I'm going to be looking for something similar. I'm taking it as if I was looking for a rental. What would I be looking for? So I'd have particular suburbs, something close to the city, comparable to where I live now. I want to have a pet because we have a wee dog, so I want to bring him with me. That doesn't seem like too much to ask, that you're allowed to have a pet. I'm going to leave the rent open, see how much it costs, and let's just see what I can get. Nothing. Okay, so I can't get anything with a pet. Maybe I'll get something if I didn't have a pet, but we do have one, so I can't really exclude that because I'm not going to get rid of a dog because I want to try and find a house to rent. Let's have a look again. So I'm going to look further afield. I'm going to look in different suburbs, add in more than just one. Now this is obviously tricky. If you live in a particular suburb and you need to move, and your kids go to school in that suburb, and then you're going to move across town to a different suburb, that creates a whole lot of different problems. So I'm looking in Richmond. I like Richmond. It's nice by the river. There's a few decent places. Not really comparable. There's no backyard, but it's 3 bedrooms. It's tidy and it's in a good location. But at $630 a week, that's a huge chunk of change. I'm hugely grateful to own my own slice of NZ paradise, as simple as it may be. Looking at our house, we do some particular things to keep our costs low. One of the things that we do is we have paid off our mortgage. So we paid off our mortgage as quickly as we could once we had the thought. Now, why I say that is because we actually held a mortgage in total for 15 years. But once we decided that we wanted to pay off our mortgage, it was action stations, and then that took us 7 years, and we've been living without a mortgage for over 8 years now. So that's one way we keep our costs low for housing, is we have still rates to pay, we still have to keep our lights on, but we are not paying the bank any money. And it's not just the money you borrow, is it? It's the interest that you pay. So if you hold a mortgage for 25 years, you're going to double your cost. Another way we keep our costs low is making sure we repair things properly when they need doing. So I discovered this year that we have a couple of rotten boards, and I've booked the builder to come and replace those. We had a number of boards fixed on that side a few years ago when we moved in, and those couple were missed, or they hadn't really kind of manifested as rotten, so we didn't do anything with them. Now that we've seen it, we're going to take action straight away. That's in contrast to things that we can repair. So here there's a few little borer holes. Each year I go around and I look for those on the house. I spray them, well, I don't spray them. I put a needle in a syringe with neem oil. So I squirt them, hopefully kill them. And then I plug the hole so no other bugs can come back in and lay their eggs. So that's woodworm. We live in a house that's over 100 years old. There's definitely still woodworm here, but I want to go around each year and repair what I can, and then if a board gets too messy with too many holes, then I'll get it taken out. So that's one way we look after our house. We're kind of taking care of the things that we own, and we've invested a huge amount of money into our home, and we want to preserve it. Another huge cost for the average New Zealand family is food. Now, recently it came out, it's been published by the Inland Revenue Department, so that's our tax department, that the average family of four is spending $25,000 per year on food. I'm not going to talk too much about how I keep my groceries low because I've got lots and lots of videos out there for you guys if you're interested to join me on some grocery shops and see how much food costs here in New Zealand. One of the first things I do that helps keep our food costs down is to garden. So I grow veggies. I'm not a gifted gardener by any stretch of the imagination, but I give it a go. This year I'm working really hard on my seed production, not for every vegetable I grow, but for a good chunk of them. Here's some that I've already started off a wee bit earlier. You can see I've got lots of cucumbers. I've got, what have I got down the back there? I've got some beans and I've got tons of pumpkins as well. So 3 big staple crops. I'm giving it a go for all sorts of different reasons, but the main one is I like doing it because it's good for the planet, it's good for me, but it also saves us tons of money. Sometimes, though, I'm not very good at growing things from seed. You could see back there I had some very dicey looking tomatoes that I've tried to start off. So for tomatoes, I actually bought seedlings, but I bought them about a month ago and they were really, really tiny, so they didn't cost much money. And then I've potted them up and I'm growing them on, and now they're all quite a decent size. By the time mid-November comes, when I'll actually get to planting them outside, they're going to be a really good, healthy plant. And if you were going to buy a big plant at the garden centre, you're probably looking at least $10. So I'll have $120 worth of plants to plant out, but I would have spent $6 on the seedlings and another $12 on the tomato potting mix. So all up, I've spent less than $20. I'm going to get $120 worth of plants, plus whatever fruit I manage to grow. Things don't always go according to plan, though. I bake a lot from scratch. Well, I bake pretty much everything from scratch, make all our meals at home from scratch. But as you can see here, sometimes I get distracted and the results are a wasted batch of biscuits. So I guess on that occasion, I actually cost myself money rather than saved it. So not my finest work, and they didn't make it into the biscuit tin, but luckily there is always a chance for a do-over. Now, the third thing that people spend the most amount of money on in New Zealand is transport. We have really expensive public transport. There's a real drive to move, I guess, to make it difficult for people. There have been a lot of subsidies over the last few years, and the government of the day has recently removed many of those. So to get a family of 4 into town on the bus and back again, for us, it's really quite prohibitive, to be honest. There's really a lot of pressure to move people into their cars. And again, this is a money-making thing, isn't it? So let's have a look in Christchurch. Oops, this is Christchurch, but not Christchurch, New Zealand. Let's get back to Ototahi, Christchurch, New Zealand, and see if I can find some petrol prices there. So this is for 91, which is the most popular petrol, I think. Let's have a look and see, what are we paying today-ish in Christchurch? So diesel, so $2.53 is the cheapest price. And just to be nosy, I guess, and show anyone, if you're from the States and you're looking at this, I wondered how many litres are in a gallon, because I know you guys work in gallons. So there's 3.785 litres per gallon. So let's just quickly jump onto the calculator and guesstimate. It's not going to be perfect, and see what it is per gallon of petrol for you guys if you were buying it in New Zealand. $9.84 per gallon, so New Zealand dollars. So you could say it's kind of half of that. So you might say $5 per gallon. I don't know if that's comparable. So please let me know in the comments below if $5 a gallon, $5 a gallon sounds good or like a shocking price to you. So to keep our costs low in the transportation department, we bought a car with cash, so a car that we could afford. It's nothing too fancy. There are lots of Ks on it, but it runs fine. And we bike as many places as we possibly can. So my kids bike to school, I bike to work. My husband, if he has to go somewhere during the day, he bikes there. We really try and use our car as little as possible. If you're still here, well done. Thanks for sticking with me. There are lots of other things we do around the house and on our property that help keep costs low. And these are not specifically housing, transport, or food, but they are things that contribute, I guess, to our overall happy frugality. So the first kind of bonus thing we do is we look for free things. So all these things I'm showing you were all found on the side of the road. Normally when I'm going for a run, and then I kind of drag them home. I'm really happy with them. I love a cane basket. We didn't have a barbecue, and now we do. So happy days. Another funny thing I do is I make sure that I split plants. So anytime I have a plant that's starting to kind of grow off in a funny angle or get an extra leaf that it doesn't look like it needs, I snip it off, I put it in water, and I start a whole new plant. Another thing I do is bake bread. It's not necessarily that you can't get cheaper bread, because you can. Bread is about $1.20 at the supermarket if you buy the cheapest bread. But to get a nice baked loaf of, high quality ingredients, that costs a lot more. So some days, I guess in the middle of winter, sometimes I feel a bit like, do I really have to bake bread today? The kids don't like it for their sandwiches anymore, so I have to bake a whole lot less. I think that's less about the taste and more just about general peer pressure and kind of looking like you have a lunchbox like everybody else's. But in summertime, when the yeast bubbles easily and I don't have to kind of place it on racks around the fire, it feels like a real pleasure. It doesn't take that long, but it is a bit of a stepped process for me. So I've got to get in there. I've got to make sure that the yeast activates. So that's one process. Then I've got to combine it in with the flour. So that's another process. Then I need to cover it up, and I need to find a warm, sunny spot in my home so that the bread can rise. Then once it's risen, then I come back out, I put it in a loaf tin, and then I put it back into another sunny spot, which will be somewhere different because the sun has moved, and then I let that rise in the tin for a wee while. And then finally it goes in the oven. Once it goes in the oven, it's less than half an hour. So it's really quick once I get to that spot. But I do really need to think ahead and plan when I'm going to bake the bread. Another thing I do that saves our household money is I throw nothing away. Yep, that's right. There's some gross old Weet-Bix and some bits of carrot in that plate. That's going to be added to the dog's food tonight. We throw nothing out. So last night we had a roast chicken, and I have done a couple of things. First off, I've gone through and taken as much chicken as I can get off the carcass myself. So it's cooked chicken off the carcass, what wasn't eaten for dinner, and then I boil the carcass to make stock so I can make some chicken soup. And if that wasn't enough, these are some extra ideas. This is how I keep myself busy for almost free. I love to find a waste product and do something useful with it. So these are baskets that I've made out of Tacoca leaves, so cabbage tree leaves in New Zealand. They're so difficult to break down. The council won't let you put it in a green bin. They have to go in the rubbish bin. So they're good for burning, but they're also really good for making baskets. I've been on a bit of a basket binge this year as I was really striving to use up all the things that I had. And I didn't have enough to sew any one particular thing, but I had lots of scraps. So these are scraps, like the stripy bit was an old pair of pajamas of my husband's, had some old jean bits, had a bit off a dress that I had taken up. And I thought, what can I do with those? And I looked online and I found an option for making little baskets. And so that's what I've done. I'm making a set of 3. This is the last one because that's the last bit of blanket I had, which was actually my dog's old blanket. Here's another example of kind of just making do with what I had. This is a wee bit older. This was actually during a COVID lockdown when I'd been on a plane with someone with COVID in those times when they made you stay at home for a period of time. So I had nothing prepared, but I didn't let that stop me. I found an old sheet and some old I had an embroidery hoop already that I'd used with the kids, and we did have all that embroidery thread, and yeah, I just embroidered a picture. In the spirit of making do and mending, being the womble that I am, here's a plant that I found outside someone's house. They were giving away this spider plant, so that was just like a cutting. So I brought that home. I put it in the bathroom and it grew, so that was all good. Now I needed to move it to a new spot, so I've moved it into a sunny spot in the lounge, but I didn't have a proper container for it. But our compost bin, the lid had broken, so that was really no good anymore as a compost bin. But I thought if I just turn it around so you can't see the compost part of it, so that sits against the wall normally, so you don't see it, what we have is just a nice grey tin with a plant coming out of it. That's it for me today. I hope you guys found something useful in there, how we keep our costs low in our family, or something interesting about just generally how expensive it is to live in New Zealand. I look forward to catching you guys next time. Bye for now.